I'm going to show you something.
What are you going to show me, Matt?
I'm going to show you a
me
Lada.
that top that?
I'm going to show you that won't top it by any stretch of the imagination.
Not for me.
This car
I'll
was
see you guys
built.
later. I'm done. Nick's
hey,
face when I said that. He thought I was
show
serious.
you a couple of cars that are built in the Soviet Union?
Yes, of course I do.
Okay, there's a Lada right there and a Volga over there.
Where? Right here?
No, right over here. The blue thing that looks like a Fiat.
What is that thing?
The blue car here. Back.
Blue car here.
Come back with me. This is a Lada.
This is
okay.
This is from
built
where?
in the Soviet Union, a town called Togliatti, named after the Italian engineer who worked out the deal with the Soviets to get these cars built.
Where'd you get this
car? The original design is a Fiat 124.
Yeah, well, it's a Fiat 124 was kind of the concept, the body style, but then they took that concept, built a factory around the size of the vehicle, and implemented 800 changes. So under the skin, it has nothing to do with the Fiat 124. It's completely different.
Okay, now it's a more substantial Fiat 124. It's got more solid steel, hot rolled instead of cold rolled.
Right,
because that was what was available in the Soviet Union at the time. Let's take a look under the hood because this is where the biggest difference is.
This car has everything original. It's got its original wheels, tires. It's got original battery, oil filter.
Now, is it restored at all, or?
Yes, I mean the car was in.
This
really
is
bad
not
condition.
a Fiat engine. It's no copy. This is an original Lada design. The single overhead cam is an original Lada. And they even, the registration is 1982 VAZ. That's the...
VAZ is an acronym, Volsky Автомобильный Завод in Russian, which in English is Volga Automobile Factory. And they sold the car under that acronym with the model 2103 inside the USSR, and for exported cars, they called them Lada, and then based on their engine size, this would be the Lada 1300 SL.
And this car was, and still is, a pretty tough automobile. I mean, it had to be driven on no roads at all.
Yeah,
in many cases.
this suspension is bulletproof. The ball joints on the car look like ball joints from a 40 Econoline van, so it's pretty solid.
What made you want this car?
I'm from Ukraine. I grew up with vehicles of this brand, and I kind of wanted to bring that over to the U.S.
Well, it also means that everybody in the 11 time zones that comprise the former Soviet Union knows how to work on one of these.
Probably, but not all of them know how to work on it right. Because a lot of times the cars that are over there, they're not adjusted right, and they smoke and all that. But if you put everything to the factory spec, the car starts on a dime, it runs in brutally cold conditions, it doesn't overheat when it's really hot out. So it's a good vehicle.
Now this is a 1982 model, but these were made well into the 21st century.
So what they did was the design of the car was updated in '76, but they made the previous design and the updated design together at the same time, as a parallel from '76 to '84.
The viewers want to know why is this not a right-hand drive, and I guess I always thought in Russia they drove on the left drive, right?
They drive just like we drive. They
That's
have
what
the
I
same,
thought. Yeah.
No right-hand drive anywhere in the.
It's a rear wheel or a front wheel?
Rear-wheel drive.
Rear-wheel drive.
Yep, it's a 4-speed, 1.3 liter inline 4-cylinder motor.
How does it handle?
It handles surprisingly well. It takes the turns well. It's got its original 36-year-old tires on, but
you have the original tires on?
You can see it says made in USSR right there.
You're not afraid of dry rot or anything?
There are no dry rot. Russian rubber.
Made in the USSR. Let's get a shot of that. I think we're getting it over there. Let's get a shot of the interior here.
Under which these cars were used, and of course, most adverse in many cases.
Very utilitarian, by the way.
Inside. They over-engineered this car. Heavier gauge metal.
Yes. Thick steel.
Yeah.
What would this car go for?
Low compression ratio to take lower octane gasoline, the whole thing.
No, the gasoline is actually, the Soviet Union had 60 octane, 76. 80 and 93, and this took 93.
Wow.
So 93 is equivalent to our 87.
Yeah.
What would this go for in like 1982?
In 82 went for 8,600 rubles, and a doctor made 200 rubles a month. But even if you had the 8,600 rubles, you probably had to wait 3 to 7 years on a waiting list.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and in some areas it was 3 to 5 years. It depended on your status with the country. If you were a communist member of the Communist Party, you were waiting less. If you weren't, you waited longer. So you had 3 days once they called your name to actually pay the money and receive the vehicle. But this car was won in a lottery in 1982 by a woman. She paid 1 ruble for the car.
Wow.
That's
She
amazing.
was lucky.
Can you start it up for us?
I can't start it up right now because the battery's disconnected, but if you want me to connect it, I'll fire it up.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to hear how this car sounds. This is very
Fascinating,
interesting,
isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder what if you didn't get this, what you would get in Russia. You know, like
Well, they
if you
only
would
made
import,
one model per size class.
Did they import other vehicles into Russia? What would you get if you didn't get this at the time?
The Russian government had 4 factories running. We have a few examples of that. This was the second to best car that you can buy, and the Volga over there is the most expensive car in the Soviet Union. So you couldn't have a car that was imported. No foreign brands were allowed unless you were a sailor, and really rarely you can bring a car with you. So sometimes, once in a while, you'd see a Mercedes that a sailor brought on the ship, but it was really rare.
When did this change, like 1990?
91, the borders opened up, and in the early 90s, most of the cars were still mostly Russian, but in later 90s, you started seeing, Western vehicles, German, European.
Sure. So I'd love to have you start it up. We'll come back to the back of the car while he does that to get the sound. It's a really actually a nice looking car. It's got that 80s look and feel. You feel like you're in like a spy movie right now. You could hear that. It sounds. It's funny. The movies get it very accurate. They get the sound very accurate.
And the oil filter, it says made USSR, and of course it's written in Cyrillic as well. How do you get the parts for these cars? Because even in the Soviet Union at the time, they were pretty hard to get.
So the reality is, in the Soviet Union, it was almost impossible to get that. The parts in the Soviet Union were stolen by people who had access to them and were kept on purpose. And people kept hundreds of parts in their garages so that they could sell it above market cost. When the Soviet Union collapsed and these cars weren't the only cars on the road, then people that had that surplus of parts stored, they didn't have anywhere to sell it, so they kept it. And then come the 2000s, we have readily available parts like the oil filters. You can buy a brand new Soviet oil filter. Not easy to find, but you can find them. You can see the motor stabilized a little bit.
Yeah, as it warms up. But that little label there, it's written in Cyrillic, and I can actually read Cyrillic letters, so I'm trying to say VAZ. That's it.
You're very knowledgeable.
VAZ filter. Воздуш.
Is he doing good?
Forget the
Yeah,
rest
that
of it.
says
It'll take me a while.
VAZ filter воздушный, which means air filter.
Yeah.
And what it says is, it says VAZ twice on both sides, so it's not meant to be read in the same sentence. The air filter needs to be changed every 10,000 kilometers or 20,000 kilometers, depending where the car was sold. They got 2 different variants of the sticker.
And if it was sold probably in Kazakhstan or someplace
It would be
remote,
10,000.
Yes. And in Moscow, you probably let it go a little longer.
Yeah, I'm going to drop the RPMs a little bit now because we're running at 1,700 RPMs. So now we dropped it down to 1,000.
Manual choke, by the way.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting, and you're certainly very knowledgeable. The viewers are loving you, and they said to say hello to you. Amazed by how much you know on Soviet Union history.
It's definitely something to learn about.
But you were born after 1991, obviously.
I was, but some people, I guess you get kind of interested in that.
Yeah.
And then it takes over you because if some people just look at cars as cars, I look at them as a part of the history. That country is now no longer existent, and it's interesting to be able to kind of have a piece of that you'll never go back in time. So
I love the styling. It's very, very
cool. I mean,
cool.
it's designed in Torino, Italy.
Yeah.
That's the actual body. The trim and everything was mixed between the Soviet and Italian design. And I believe that the undercarriage of the car was updated in the USSR and then actually licensed back to Fiat. So some of the Fiat licenses that they did to Polski Fiat and to some other countries had Russian updates in them.
Well, that's all. The interesting thing is, could you take Fiat 124 parts? Obviously, the engine's different, but on most of this car, could you both put Fiat parts on this car?
No, they'll look very similar, but they won't match.
Interesting.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, you may be able to get a rim, for example, to fit on the car, but if you were to try to put bumpers on, door panels, locks, it's all different. Door handles are different than the Fiat 124 Special.
How's the heat work?
If you turn it on for 1 minute, you can keep it off for an hour.
Wow.
It's really hot.
It needs to be.
Yeah, in the Russian winters.
Thank you so much.
Thank
this
you.
was really cool.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate
Thank
it
you
as
very
well.
much.